Benning is seeing double in The Face of Love.
David Michôd takes us on a post-apocalyptic ride in The Rover.
And we get into the groove with the godfather of Irish punk in Good Vibrations. Hello.
Good evening.
Also tonight, Team Rwanda cycles out of tragedy in Rising from the Ashes.
Andrzej Wajda shines a light on Poland's Man of Iron in Walesa, Man of Hope.
And tonight's classic is Claude Chabrol's The Unfaithful Wife. But first, David, I think we've got to go with The Rover.
Well, 10 years after the collapse, outback Australia is a grim, barren place where outcasts of mixed races scrabble to survive in a world where the only currency accepted is US dollars. Here, desperate, ruthless men and women cling to a small veneer of civilization. Eric, Guy Pearce, seems, when we first see him, to be a tired and beaten man. But when three men steal his car, he becomes obsessed with getting it back, for reasons that are, like many elements of the film, held back from the audience. While doggedly pursuing the men who stole his transportation, Eric reluctantly joins forces with Ray, Robert Pattinson, the injured brother of one of the men.
What you doing with this car? It's my brother's car.
Where's your brother?
Where is he? Where's Henry at?
Where's your brother? Where is he? You tell me where he is or I'm gonna kill you. Where is he?
Much was expected of Australian director David Michôd after his brilliant, unsettling debut feature, Animal Kingdom. Expectations that have, for the most part, been met with his second feature. The Rover is a road movie that inevitably evokes the Mad Max films because, like them, it's set in the desert of an apparently ruined Australia. The new film is also an odd couple movie, with Eric, an apparently decent man, forming a reluctant partnership with the untrustworthy and unpredictable Ray. The film is pretty violent and is structured around a series of suspenseful scenes that are very well handled. Only at the very end does the contrivance of the whole enterprise show through, and by then you've either embraced the film for the sheer cinematic smarts it exhibits or rejected it. Cinematography by Argentina's Natasha Breyer is excellent, and among the fine actors to make major contributions are Gillian Jones as a sinister old woman, Susan Pryor as an isolated doctor, David Field as one of the car thieves, and American Scoot McNairy as Ray's vicious brother. Margaret, what did you think of The Rover?
I think it is spare genre filmmaking. It is really, really well done. I think Robert Pattinson, that role could have gone so easily awry, and I think he handles it fabulously. Guy Pearce is just wonderfully solid as Eric. I think one of the great things about this film is the soundscape on it, with music by Anthony Parkos and Sam Petty contributing as well to the sound design. I think it looks great. I mean, it must be enormous pressure on David Michôd to come up with a film after Animal Kingdom, and he chose to make this one here in Australia, you know, trying to conceive of a future that is possibly real for this country. So there are social and economic subtext to the film.
I think inevitably after Animal Kingdom, which was so good, you feel slightly let down with this. Not greatly, because it's a beautifully made film.
It's so different. It's so different. I think he's been really wise to go, OK, I'm going out there. Yeah. Flinders Ranges, here I come. I'm giving it 4 stars.
Yes, I am too. 4 stars.
I'll tell you what God's given you. He's put a bullet in you. And he's abandoned you out here to me. He feels nothing for you. Your brother left you to die. That's what people do. You don't learn to fight, your death's gonna come real soon.
The Rover opens in limited national release this week. And on our website are interviews with writer-director David Michôd and actors Guy Pearce and Robert Pattinson. Now, in the first few minutes of The Face of Love, you're given the background to Nikki, Annette Bening and Garrett, Ed Harris. They're a middle-aged married couple who are still in love with one another. On a holiday in Mexico, Garrett accidentally drowns and Nikki is inconsolable. 5 years later, on a visit to a Los Angeles art gallery, she spies a man who bears a remarkable resemblance to her dead husband. He's Tom, an artist and art teacher. She virtually stalks him and sets up a meeting.
May I help you?
Hi. Hello.
Hi. What can I do for you?
I was interested in the class.
Oh, so I'm sorry, but we're in the middle of the semester.
Oh.
Did you check with the office? Did you check with admissions?
You know, I didn't. Well, I did. I just to find the classroom, it was just a spur of the moment kind of thing.
Well, this is a college. They're not very spontaneous.
Right. Yeah.
As their relationship develops, she keeps him away from anyone who would recognise the resemblance, like her daughter Summer, Jess Weixler, and her neighbour, Robin Williams. Nikki projects her dead husband onto the image of Tom.
Here we go.
Wow.
Nikki,
Yeah.
you all right?
I'm fine. I just got a little dizzy.
There's something heartfelt about grief in this romantic melodrama, which, while it has moments of ludicrousness, really touches you. Co-written and directed by Ari Posen as his second feature, he's had the good fortune to be able to cast two stalwarts of cinema in Annette Bening and Ed Harris as the leads. They are so fine. They really take you into the emotional heart of each of their characters. Notable also is Jess Weixler as Summer. It's been beautifully designed by Janine Opperwall. There's something to be said about seeing people living in aesthetically designed spaces. This is not a great movie, but there is pleasure seeing two good actors really inhabiting their characters. David.
I have a feeling the director had seen Vertigo one too many times. And there's not only a poster of Vertigo in the film, but so much of the plot, although of course it's not a thriller, but it's, and with the sexes reversed, it's the sort of basic Vertigo theme. But really this is not, it's not a thriller, it's more like a 40s melodrama. It could have starred Joan Crawford or Bette Davis back in the day.
I love 40s melodramas.
Well, so do I, and I do too, and I enjoyed quite a lot of this. I mean, I agree with you. I think Annette Bening and Ed Harris are good, but the trouble is it's one of those films where if only she had just told the truth at a certain point, it would have, of course, there wouldn't be a movie if she did.
No, exactly. I mean, there is a contrivance in the plot about that.
Quite a major one, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, she makes you believe, wanting to keep this to herself.
Yeah,
and
just about, just about.
I'm giving it 3.5 stars.
I'm giving it 3.
Roger. I think I might have found somebody.
What do you mean?
I met a man.
That's terrific, Nikki. I'm ecstatic for you.
What? You sound mad.
Yeah, I guess I am. I am mad.
Why?
I've been asking you out for years, and I realize I'm just your neighbor.
Roger, you were Garrett's friend.
So what? He's dead. Susan's dead.
Roger, I'm sorry.
So, is he younger? Some boy toy?
He's my type.
Congrats. So you fall in love with somebody else?
No, I think I'm still very much in love with Garrett. I'm more in love with him than ever.
The Face of Love opens around the country in limited release this week. Our next film is Good Vibrations. As a kid, Belfast-born Terry Hooley suffered for his dad's politics. Another kid fired an arrow at him and he lost an eye. As a man, played by stage actor Richard Dormer, Terry finds work as a DJ in a pub where he meets Ruth Jodie Whittaker. Soon, Terry is promoting local punk bands while fending off IRA extremists. He proves to be a bad husband and father, but his love of music sees him through.
And the thieves are taken care of.
14p.
And we're selling for 50p.
How many were you thinking of doing?
3,000. Trust me. Up your holy am I.
Oh, I thought you were saying it to me, am I? I'm Polydor.
I know it up their hole anyway. We made it, we cracked the code, we did it without them. You've always got some money.
This biopic, co-produced by Michael Winterbottom's company, is energetic and interesting in its depiction of the way the most extreme conflicts in troubled Northern Ireland could be somewhat alleviated through popular music. How true this is, I'm not certain, but the film, enjoyable as much of it is, can't decide whether to criticise Hooley for drinking too much and neglecting his wife and child, or praise him for his contribution to punk music. In the end, he emerges as a very flawed hero. What did you think of him, Margaret?
I thought he was a very flawed hero, exactly. And I think that was my problem with the film, that I found him so unsympathetic and such a cheat in a way. But the thing that I liked about it was this whole arrival of punk in Northern Ireland and the energy that gives the film.
Yeah.
But I've sort of opted out of quite a lot of his story, and I thought he was, you know, everybody's raving about this performance, but I didn't like it very much, but maybe I just didn't like the character.
I felt much the same, I must say.
Yeah, I can only give it 3 stars, David.
I'm with you on this one, 3 from me too.
You're barred.
You can't bar us. We've never even been in here before.
Well, forgive me, Lip, you're definitely barred now.
I know people. I could have you shot.
I know the same people you know. I could have you sent to bed without your supper.
You're laughing now, but I swear to sooner or later I'm gonna get you.
Right, back to business.
Good Vibrations opens in limited national release this week. The formation of a national cycling team in Rwanda is the subject of the documentary Rising from Ashes, an apt title given the decimation of that country during the genocide of 1994. Although most of the young men who formed the kernel of the first team were young at that time, the terrible things that were done to their families during the bloodbath when Hutus went on the rampage against the Tutsis cast a shadow over the present. When mountain bike pioneer Tom Ritchie visits the country in 2005, he sees the potential for championship cycling as a catalyst for national pride and calls on his old friend, cycling champion Jock Boyer, to help out. The story is given extra depth by Jock Boyer's involvement with the team. He was a man in despair after the end of his cycling career and after a prison sentence. So this film is not just about rebuilding hope in Rwanda within the team, it's a story of Jock's redemption too.
I rode with them every day for over a month, and you can tell which riders naturally shifted right, naturally went down the hills pretty good. And also the essence you feel from a rider, the power, the mind power of suffering. How long are they gonna hang on? Cycling is about suffering. You cannot be a cyclist without going through incredible amounts of pain. Nobody escapes it. I knew these guys were gonna be traveling, so I needed personalities. And that was a big deal. If I had 2 riders with the same power and one was like really charismatic and kind of got it, I did pick them.
Directed by T.C. Johnston, narrated by Forrest Whitaker, and executive produced by him, amongst others, Rising from Ashes is a solid documentary about the value of sport in giving a nation pride, in bonding team members whose families were once enemies, and in the value of connection for someone like Jock Boyer. David?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an inspirational film in many ways. I'd like to have known a bit more about Jock Boyer, about his background, because I thought he was a really interesting and obviously very flawed character. But yes, look, I think it's a perfectly decent documentary. I don't really have very much to add to what you've said, Margaret.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is that you know, we've seen a lot of sports documentaries about, you know, little teams, and you know, they come through
the battlers,
and you know, go, oh, you know, is this going to be another one? But actually, it's given ballast by Boyer's story.
That's right. Yeah.
And you know,
but as I say, I'd like to have known a little bit more about that side of it.
I think you get to know him pretty well through this film.
Yeah.
I'm giving it 3.5 stars.
I'm giving it 3.
For the April month, when I ride bike, sometimes I get headaches because I remember a lot of things from my family for genocide here. Before genocide, I was still younger. From my family, I lost my brother. I lost my brother, my brother. And then I lost my family from my mom. Others family was like, I think was like above 60, 60 immediately going. Even now it's still hard, you know. Yeah.
Rising from Ashes opens around the country in limited release next week. And now for Wałęsa, Man of Hope. In 1981, the working-class leader of Poland's solidarity movement, Lech Wałęsa, gave an interview to the celebrated Italian journalist Oriana Fallaci. This is the starting point for veteran director Andrzej Wajda's film about Wałęsa, who comes to the screen with complete conviction thanks to the superb acting of Robert Wikiewicz. Wałęsa was involved in the 1970 shipworker protests in the port of Gdansk, the setting for Wajda's great films Man of Marble and Man of Iron. He married Danuta Agnieszka Grokowska, and they had a large family. But gradually, Wałęsa finds himself the face of the Polish worker in opposition to the seemingly invincible communist system. And as such, he's one of the triggers that brought about the collapse of totalitarianism in Eastern Europe.
Proszę wszystkich, żeby każdy na przyszłą rocznicę przyniósł ze sobą kamień. Jeśli wszyscy przyniosą po jednym, na pewno postawimy pomnik. Będzie to pomnik niezwykły, ale i sytuacja była niezwykła. Władza ludowa strzelała do ludu swego. Chcemy, by prawo zapanowało nad bezprawiem. Chcemy, by nigdy Polak nie musiał podnosić ręki na Polaka.
Potrafi przemawiać. Umie porwać tłum.
Jeśli za rok mnie tutaj nie będzie, nazywam się Lech Wałęsa. Przyjdźcie po mnie. A jeśli ja będę, a kogoś z was nie będzie, ja pójdę po was.
Andrzej Wajda has an amazing record as a director. His first feature, A Generation, was made 60 years ago, and he's still going strong as this dynamic portrait of the man who rose from dock worker to president attests. Wałęsa's fearlessness and passionate oratory are immortalized in Wikiewicz's totally convincing portrayal. Wajda knows this story at first hand. He was even involved in the events back in 1981. This latest film from one of the cinema's great veterans is very welcome, even though the handheld camera is a bit overused at times. Margaret.
That's most probably in the documentary footage, David.
No, it's in some of the I mean, it's trying to look documentary.
And I mean, you know, I mean, to that extent, you know, that he's blended documentary footage into it is very... I just found that the transitions in this... I didn't feel that this story came together for me.
Really?
No, I really wanted it to, because I think Wajda is such a wonderful director.
Yeah.
But, and I think it's a terrific performance, but I didn't feel actually that it was very dynamic as a film. And I wanted to be more inspired, more moved.
And I kind of agree with you. I found it really pretty dynamic and totally fascinating to have this sort of inside look at the life of this quite remarkable man.
Well, yes, and arrogant man too.
Sure, I mean, very flawed man. I'm certain of that. But still, you know, this is a real insight from someone who really knew him, and I just found it a fascinating.
Sometimes being up close is a disadvantage.
Well, that's true too, but not in this case, I don't think.
All right. Well, I'm giving it 3 stars.
I'm giving it 4.
Jury Pokojowej Nagrody Nobla,
Tak?
przyznając swoją nagrodę Lechowi Wałęsie,
Bardzo się cieszymy.
postanowiły w tym roku określić się
Dziękujemy.
jako narzędzie
Do widzenia.
w konfrontacyjnej grze, tym razem przeciwko Polsce, przeciwko socjalizmowi. Malutkim druczkiem w środku.
Tak, już proszę. Jakiś osobisty. Tak, już proszę męża. Z ambasady Norwegii.
Nie. Decyzja jest stała. O, nie mogę, bo mnie potem nie wpuszczą z powrotem do kraju. Danuśka pojedzie. Znaczy się żona. Tak, to będzie najlepsze wyjście. Dziękuję. Ja też życzę miłego dnia. Dziękuję. Będzie dobrze.
Walesa, Man of Hope opens in limited national release from next week. Now, the classic I've chosen tonight is The Unfaithful Wife, La Femme Infidèle, made in 1968 by the French director Claude Chabrol. Chabrol was part of the French New Wave, and like many of his contemporaries, Truffaut, Godard, Romer, Rivette, had been a critic for Cahiers du Cinéma, the internationally significant film magazine. He's seen as more mainstream in his career. He was prolific and, for the most part, very successful. He helped fund early films of his colleagues. His most renowned period of filmmaking was from the late 60s through the 70s, in which he made a series of films about bourgeois families and murder. He was influenced by Hitchcock, but claims that his 3 greatest inspirations were Murnau, Ernst Lubitsch and Fritz Lang. His characters are often named Charles and Hélène, as they are in The Unfaithful Wife. Michel Bouquet plays a lawyer who gradually begins to suspect that his wife, played by Chabrol's then-wife, Stéphane Audrin, has a lover. He hires a private detective to follow her, and when he finds out the name of the man she visits, he's Victor Pagala, played by Maurice Rodet, he pays him a visit.
Je la tiens au courant de ma vie comme elle me raconte la sienne. Quand elle m'a parlé de vous, j'ai tenu à vous connaître. Écoutez, j'en suis enchanté. Un peu surpris peut-être parce que je n'avais pas envisagé votre couple de cette façon-là. Mais je trouve ça épatant. Vraiment. Ah oui. Vraiment. Vous savez, on a toujours un peu de scrupule de coucher avec une femme mariée. On a peur des histoires, des salades, des trucs. Enfin, moi, en tout cas. Mais là, moi, c'est vrai. D'autant plus que vous êtes un cas un peu particulier. Ah bon? Hélène a bien des aventures. Enfin, sans exagérer. Ce n'est pas ni pas tendère, mais en général, ça ne dure pas plus d'une fois ou 2. Vous êtes un privilégié.
When Victor goes missing, the police come calling because Hélène's name is in his address book. It's all so cool, this film, so precise, and yet it's very unsettling, largely because of the character of Charles. On the surface, he's the urbane, controlled lawyer, but underneath there are uxorious passions seething. Michel Bouquet is just great in the role. He was, along with Stéphane Audrin, a regular in Chabrol's films during this period. The mood of the film is considerably enhanced by Pierre Jansen's austere music and by Jean Rabier's cinematography, both regular collaborators of Chabrol. David?
I love Chabrol's films, and this one I think is my favourite of all his films, so it's a wonderful choice. If ever you wanted to encapsulate what bourgeois life was like in France, this couple, the way they live in this beautiful house with this huge garden near Versailles, is just perfect. The fact that they seem a little bit remote from one another, and yet there's that wonderful moment when Charles says to her, "Je t'aime comme un fou," I love you like a madman. And you never really realise the intensity with which he feels about it. It's superbly done. The other thing is the photography is really great, and the last shot of this film involves the camera tracking back and at the same time zooming forward, which is a most unusual approach, but it gives a wonderfully eerie and unsettling feeling to the climax of the film.
I mean, it's so beautifully controlled, this film.
Yeah.
And the other great asset is that performance of Michel Bouquet, and I love him in this scene.
Vous assistiez à ce cocktail?
Oui, il me semble, oui.
Ah, alors peut-être avez-vous fait la connaissance de Monsieur Pegala?
Non, je ne crois pas. C'est un nom qui ne me dit rien.
Vous voulez voir son visage? J'ai sur moi une photographie.
Si vous voulez. Non, son visage ne me dit rien.
Mais madame, il n'y a pas d'erreur, c'est bien lui que vous connaissez.
C'est bien lui.
Et vous ne vous êtes jamais rendu chez lui?
Non. Mais enfin, vous savez, inspecteur, je le connaissais vraiment très peu. Je me demande même pourquoi il avait noté mon adresse.
Oui, peut-être vous trouvait-il à son goût.
Peut-être.
Ooh!
Superb film, wonderful performances. Chabrol's The Unfaithful Wife. And next week, the classic is Robert Hamer's Ealing comedy, Kind Hearts and Coronets.
And that's the show for tonight. So good night from us.
Good night.